Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Performance Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Amy Calandrino, and I'm CEO and founder of BeyondCommercial.com. We are a full-service brokerage located here in Orlando, Florida, serving the needs of business owners and families for now 14 years. You can go over to our website at BeyondCommercial.com for our latest listings, blog posts, and all kinds of information. If you have a business in Orlando, we would love to be a resource. I have with me today the distinct pleasure of having Edie Weintraub, and she is in Atlanta, primarily retail, has her own boutique brokerage, and I will let her tell us a little bit more about how she got into that, what she does, but it's very similar to what we do here. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't wait to chat.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Amy.
Yes.
So brief bio. I've been in commercial real estate for just under 20 years. I got into real estate and quickly realized that I did not like the emotional aspect of what the woman wanted in the house, what the man wanted in the house, what they could afford, and what was on the market, but then also working nights and weekends. I did know that I wanted a family ultimately, so I wanted to find something that was more 9 to 5 and dealing with business owners. So when I first started in the industry, I was working with Party City and Famous Footwear and great brands, well-respected, well-known, but I would open a store and I would look around and I'd say, where is everybody? And I quickly decided to rely on my relationships in entertainment, food and beverage, and the nightclub industry because I used to be a promoter for nightclubs in the Buckhead area. And I'm one of those crazy people that loves the energy of every day is a blank slate. You get to start all over. Hopefully today is better than yesterday. And so I pulled a lot of those relationships into the world of real estate and was able to aggregate a lot of my existing connections and moved into working with restaurateurs and service industry, beauty industry, fitness industry. We love working with small businesses. So seeing their growth and evolution just fuels my fire.
Yeah, one of the cool things we talked about like off camera is you've been able to build your brokerage now to where you can be really intentional about who you work with. And I agree with that because I feel like the people that you have on your team or the people that you're serving, that energy is contagious, whether it's bad or good. And it's bad energy, it sucks you dry. Tell me a little bit about if it's like an existing brand. I thought this was really cool, the process that you kind of go through to figure out if they're a good fit for your team. And then also after that too, talk about the name of your brokerage and how you came up with that too. I don't want to forget that.
All right, let's start with the brokerage first because I think it's a nice segue from just a brief intro. So about 4 years ago, I knew that I did not want to be at a big firm anymore. There were things in brokerage that I wanted to do differently in terms of serving our clients and making sure that they were in the headlines, and we're happy to be the little byline at the bottom. But I did not want it to be a company named after me. I wanted it to hopefully live and breathe beyond me. And I just thought about how can I make a name that is less than 10 characters, because obviously my name is very long. And so I knew that email was going to be very long. So I wanted something short and sweet, and I've got it now to a good cadence. But came up with Terra Alma. So Terra is Italian for ground or dirt, and Alma is Spanish for soul. And so really how that came about is I love traveling. I feel like we all learn and grow and are more receptive to taking in different things as we're traveling. And so it is a value that we encourage for our teammates that, please take PTO, please go travel, please tell us what you learned, because as much as we try, I find that the majority of us, cannot take our hats off, right? We're always looking at retail, we're always looking at restaurant, we're always looking at the, consumer experience or the feel of the pedestrians walking down the street and how they're experiencing those shops and those patios and the liveliness. So it is the massive filter by which we pass everything through. If we don't feel like we could put a piece of our soul into working with this individual, whether it's a landlord, developer, a city, or a tenant, we just don't work with them. Because at the end of the day, we often spend a lot of time together and get to know each other on a deeper level. So if we just don't feel like that's a fit, then there's plenty of other doors that will open for us. And so that's a beautiful segue, because going into evaluating new clients. So a lot of times people reach out to us and are asking to work with us because of what they're seeing that we're putting out either on our website or social media, or podcast, etc. And we tell them, hey, we are grateful for you reaching out. Let us set up some time to get together. And before we actually get together in person with the business owner, we go, if at all possible, that they're local or regional, we go and we secret shop them. If we go and secret shop them and we find out that their servers love working there, their bartenders like, oh my God, like this is the best place ever. They took good care of us. I know obviously there's going to be, not always shining stars, but if across the board everything is, good, or across the board if everything is bad, then we have an inclination as to whether or not we feel comfortable in representing that brand going forward. And yes, there's some times where we notice some things that might be off, and we'll give them a little grace because the majority of our team has worked in hospitality. And so they know that you're not always going to have a perfect day. But that's part of the secret shopping and talking to multiple people and truly understanding how they are as a business owner.
Wow. I think that's just so powerful. And I haven't thought to do that, before. So I just thought that's a really great tool, is to get some better. And I bet you, like on the office side, probably going on Glassdoor or those kinds of things too, you can get a flavor for if it's like more of like a medical or a lawyer. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. We do the same thing if we're representing a landlord or developer, right? Because if we've got prospective tenants that are looking at spaces, we are vetting them and looking at their Google reviews or their Instagram feed. Are they truly who they say they are when we meet with them in person as to their online presence, because we want there to be synergy in that and a cohesive message.
I think that's amazing. Tell me about so you've traveled a lot. What's one of the coolest places that you've been recently?
Recently. So last year, just last year, but the year before, I told my husband I really want our boys who are 12 and 14 today to learn how to ski. It's not a skill that I grew up learning, but I thought, if we can make sure that they know how to play tennis, golf, make sure they know how to swim, and make sure they know how to ski, I feel like we've given them a good foundation for, making friends around the world and not feeling less than for not, being able to join any future friends in those activities. So a couple years ago, I said, honey, I really want the kids to learn how to ski. And we looked around the U.S. and I said, it's really expensive. I feel like, post-pandemic, a lot of people were not traveling internationally, but I love traveling internationally. So he found that there was a community, or country rather, between Spain and France. And if you asked me 3 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to tell you, but it's called Andorra. And Andorra is a small country between the two. And that's where the boys learned how to ski. And so we were able to spend time in Andorra, and then conversely came back through Barcelona, spent a couple of days in Barcelona. And last year we left Barcelona and we went up to Paris. And it was really cool to be in Paris pre-Olympics, because I feel like my previous trips to Paris have not been as welcoming. I feel like they were on their best behavior and they were learning to be more hospitable to Americans in anticipation of the Olympics. But during that time, I took my son, my youngest is really into food. And I said, oh, no, I've signed us up for a croissant class. And he goes, well, is it, a couple people or is it just us? And I'm like, honestly, I booked this 6 months ago. I don't even remember. So
I do that all the time. I do that all the time. Like I book a trip and I don't even remember what we're supposed to do, where we're supposed to go.
Yes. At least I have the address and the time, the date that we need to be there, and I'm good. So we get there, and I swear this little pastry shop was probably no more than 700 square feet. It was just the pastry chef and my son and myself. And he had so much fun because obviously all the attention was on him. I was like doing little video clips of him. And we got back from that trip and he's like, Mom, I got to make croissants. We landed at like 3:00 in the afternoon. I said, Noah, you don't have a scale. Everything on the recipe is in, weights, and you need to weigh it. He goes, I'll figure it out. So he made croissants that day. They turned out a little dark, but they were still delicious. The next day, the scale came, and he made another batch of croissants. And I said, Noah, you can't keep doing this because I want to eat your food, but like I can't have croissants every day. But it was really beautiful experience to be able to have that with him, because a couple weeks after that, we're in the car, and I've never asked my kids this. He said, Mom, I figured out what I want to be when I grow up. And I said, oh, okay, what is that? He goes, I want to be a pastry chef. And I said, okay, cool. So thankfully, I know a lot of folks in food and beverage. And so he spent a couple weeks this summer volunteering with a friend of ours who was opening a cafe and basically just mirroring whatever they needed and just figuring out if this is something that he truly wants to do. So it was a beautiful experience to have that international influence, but also come back with, an education.
That's incredible. And I encourage that in any field. Like if you think that you want to do something, shadow someone, follow someone around, and get to know people. Like I was a paralegal before I became a commercial real estate broker. Wait, what?
Me too.
What?
Yes.
See?
Yes.
And those listening to the podcast, I usually have an intro call with the guest that's supposed to be like 10, 15 minutes for us to get to know each other. I think we were on the phone for like close to an hour. We're both like, okay, we have to now go. So now we're learning even more things. So, oh my gosh, I think a trip to Atlanta is in order for me soon. But yeah, so one of the attorneys that helped put the land together for Disney, he worked with my husband at the time. My husband was part of that firm. And he would see me behind the computer, and I would just be like jamming out work, like call, file a paper, and just very like efficient. And he's like, and he would hear me with the clients. Like I wouldn't just call the clients like, hey, where'd you send this? I'd be like, hey, how are you doing? How's your son? How's your dog? Da 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 da. Like, and he's like, you got to get out from behind the desk. And so like he took me to like start shaking hands and meeting people, and then kind of it all built from there. Yeah.
Amazing story.
So you were in the service industry. Was the paralegal a stop along the way before commercial real estate, or where was that in the chronology?
Yeah, I'm one of those crazy people that I almost like to have multiple things going at one point in time or one time. So while I was working as a paralegal, I think I was still doing a little bit of food and beverage stuff. But it was really when I was 21, 22, 23 that I was in the nightclub industry. But then during the day, I was working as a paralegal because, I figured it's stupid for me to go out and have to pay to go to these nightclubs. They should pay me. So I was there being a promoter, talking to people, pulling people into my club. And I thought it was a phenomenal job. Like I'm getting paid to like work in the nightclub industry and bring people into my club. It was really fun. So it was kind of a nice balance of like having the day job, but then still having like somewhat of a social like entertainment life as well.
What kind of law was it?
So on the paralegal side of things, I started with intellectual property, copyright, trademark, and patents. And I worked with really intellectual people, but these were people who have, undergrad, JD, PhD. I had one that was undergrad, JD, MD. And I'm like, oh my God, these people are geniuses, right? Because they're writing patents for like some smart stuff. They were not the most enjoyable people to talk to, right? Because they were so cerebral that I said, I can't do this anymore. Then I moved to med mal and family law, and I realized how mean people are. And that's when I decided, hey, I got to get out of this. Like, I like people. I want to continue to like people. And my father was the one who realized, hey, I know that you've kind of, found your own way and thought about dentistry and law, but I really think that you need to consider real estate. So go get your license, come work with me. And I really think this is the direction you need to go. So I'm forever grateful for him to see that and see that spark in me to cultivate that.
Yeah, the first attorney I ever worked. Oh, I'm actually having dinner with him tonight. He's 81 now. He had started practicing in 1969 or 1970. And he's the one that introduced my husband and I and his wife. So we're actually having a double date tonight for dinner. One thing I'd like to say on my podcast, it's been my mantra for 2024, and I've done a really good job at this. You cannot make new old friends. So don't forget your like friends that have been around forever. So I have been really intentional about getting together for like coffees or dinners or calling or texting or whatever, because like there's these people that you've known forever, and I think sometimes you can take them for granted. And so yeah, like and you always say like, oh, we're gonna get together, oh, we're gonna get together. Like, yeah, I think so it's cool. I'm excited to get. His wife was like, oh, hell, Greg, they're going to get married one day about me and my husband. And we did. And so we're having dinner with them tonight. But, oh, he did family law. And I was like, some people, they just chase each other into the depths of hell and like back again. And it's like,
sad.
It is so sad. It's like, but I enjoyed like doing the business law with my husband, though. It was really fun. And we didn't do the patents, but he did do some trademarks and copyrights and lots of contracts, all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty cool. So tell us about what kind of trends are you seeing on the retail side that's maybe different than when you first got into the industry?
Yeah. Again, at the time, I was working with Party City and Famous Footwear, and they were growing via power centers. And I think in that time, again, this is taking us back to the mid 2000s. At the time, there had been a continued growth of lifestyle centers. So, really kind of playing into those holes where the malls might be, on either side, but those retailers still needed to grow. So like Banana Republic, Gap, Old Navy. And so they would go into the lifestyle centers. And more often than not, the lifestyle centers were outside, open air, parking that was really accessible. You didn't have to park at one side and then walk into the mall. And so lifestyles were very attractive. I think we're still continuing to see like that evolution of lifestyle center, but it's kind of moving in the direction of mixed use, which makes my heart so happy, because I hate when I see projects that are built because of spreadsheets or the way that bankers or lenders want to look at them. Oh, I get industrial goes here. Oh, I get medical goes here. I get retail goes here. And I just think it's so sad that we have to have such car-centric, neighborhoods that evolve. And to bring it all back together, I think is really where we as a community, as a society, human nature, we are human beings and we need one another. And so if you cannot have to worry about walking down to the store because you forgot eggs or your recipe calls for eggs and you can just go down to the local market and grab it, it's a 10-minute walk. I feel like that's really where we all should be evolving to, because while I do love a good ride here and there and listen to my podcasts or whatnot, I really would like to take my time back. And I think that's the best way to do it.
I'm moving the beginning of December, and actually that brings me back to what other thing you talked about. You didn't want to do residential because of the hours. Do you know my real estate agent was talking to me at 9:30 last night p.m. because my husband's going to be in depots today, tomorrow, and the next day, and I'm like, do you want to get both of us? We could talk in like 5 minutes, or we could try to fit it in. And she's like, let's just talk now. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But like, I think in residential, you end up working from like 8 a.m. to like 8 p.m. pretty much every day. But I'm moving, and we're going to get a golf cart. So I'll actually be close enough to walk to a grocery store, or golf cart to a bunch of different like restaurants, or golf cart to the course or whatever. And I'm really looking forward to that. I don't think we have, the closest I came to it is, if you're familiar with Winter Park, I was on North Park Avenue area, and I was about a mile to downtown.
Sure.
But like in the summer, that's still pretty.
Yeah.
But it was a nice walk, and I would sometimes walk to the farmers market, but most of the time I'd like bike.
Right.
So I think if you could like bike or take a golf cart or walk and get to the things that you want, I think that's just a beautiful thing. So.
I agree.
If you live in the Southeast. So, let me think. As growing your brokerage, can you talk about, and you talked about the intentionality of it, Can you talk about some examples where mindset has kind of come into play as you've gone through your evolution of growing your own boutique brokerage?
Absolutely. So I think that, you may have had clients from previous firms that moved over with you to new firms. And I feel like sometimes, we just grow in different directions. So in one instance, there was a group that changed out my contact. So initially it was one of the founders, and then it moved into a different contact person. And that contact person was more construction oriented and less like strategy, real estate feel. And at the end of the day, I think we all decided, as much as I was very bullish and excited about the brand, I think we felt like, the new structure and orientation was just not the right fit. And I wanted to see them successful. I wanted to see them grow. And so I just said, hey, and I think we all kind of came together at the same time, said, hey, we are grateful for the time that we've worked together. We've opened multiple locations together, but I think it's a good time to kind of break up. And I said, nope, totally understand. Like, I feel like, sometimes it's good to have fresh eyes on an assignment. But for me, I'm very much an abundance mindset, and for every door that closes or for every relationship that, kind of comes to a lull or a good kind of resting place, there's 3 more that will be open in front of you. So I think I've tried to share that message with the team, because we've done, probably 10 pitches in the last 2 months. And I think obviously it's also a great opportunity for us to practice, because every time we do that, we get better. We sit back and we talk about what we do well, what could we have done differently. But we also then ask for feedback from the groups that we pitch, whether or not we got the assignment, because we want to understand how we can always look to improve.
I think that's so powerful. I just sent out, I'm working on my November content calendar, and I know it's a ways out, but one of my posts is going to be about feedback. And there's a really powerful podcast that I've heard before. And it's Melody, and I forgot her last name, but she was on the Adam Grant podcast, and it's all about feedback, not criticism, but like feedback and giving and receiving feedback. And I think it's so valuable to be able to improve yourself, and go into each situation and have that kind of growth. And that's really, for me, I was in like a dark period in my life when I decided to start this podcast, and not like happy, and like thought, what better way to get my mindset back than to have a podcast about mindset? So it's been really powerful. And then, it's the people you're around in your sphere that then add to that mindset. With the business owners you represent, and I think we might have chatted about it. Do you do both selling, just helping them buy and to lease?
Sure. Yeah, whatever their needs are. I think we tend to gravitate more towards leasing, just because the majority of folks that we work with are small business owners, and they'd rather invest in doing multiple locations than buying the real estate. I have multiple clients say, hey, I'm in the restaurant business, I'm not in the real estate business. But then it affords us the opportunity to perhaps bring in an investor who wants to buy, knowing that there's going to be a tenant in place. And so we've made some of those matches as well.
That's really cool. Do you have anyone that's a big success story that you've helped from the very beginning, or anyone come to mind?
I think one of our greatest success stories, it's not a client that I led, but my partner did, and I love singing her praises. But I met her initially because she started as a cookie warmer inside of a food hall that we curated. And initially she set up shop on top of the bar with a little cookie warmer and sold her cookies out of that space. We ultimately moved her to a stall where she was one of 2 vendors. She basically had a third of the stall and had a little bit more of stability, obviously, in terms of showcasing her cookies. They were just flying off the shelves. They're delicious, right? They're still served warm.
I can't even imagine smelling warm cookies.
No. And so she went from a warmer on the bar to a third of a space where she was just one of 2 vendors. Then the stall behind her opened, and she was just doing so well from a sales perspective that she said, I want that space. Took over a whole stall herself, in that space. And what is so fascinating is this woman is just so magical. She is allergic, like deathly allergic of flour. So whenever she bakes, she would wear this massive mask. So here she is baking cookies in this whole evolution of her growth. And so she ultimately took over a whole stall in the food hall. Again, one of our top performers. And then we ultimately helped her open up another freestanding location. And she is currently working on her third location. So she'll have 2 brick and mortars and 1 food hall space. And so it's just really beautiful to like understand her story, to celebrate her, but also, watch her grow. It's so rewarding for all of us.
How did she come up with that idea if she's actually allergic to flour?
Yes, it's wild.
But cookies bring such joy to people. So maybe that's what it is.
Yes. I think the other story that makes her so magical to me is that she was voluntarily a surrogate for a family friend and carried a baby for them. So, I mean, it's one thing to bake cookies, but to hear that your heart is so big that you're able to do something so selfless, I mean, she's forever like at the top of my list.
It's amazing. Yeah. I get to meet so many different aspiring entrepreneurs. Like I consider myself a good person, but like these people are next level. It's incredible. So what new things do you have on your horizon? You have your own podcast too, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. What else is new on your and you're Edie everywhere, obviously across like social media. What new things do you have coming down the pike that you can talk about?
So we've got a group of women in restaurants that we've been cultivating for the last couple of years. I just love getting them together and helping them learn from one another and make sure that they know each other exists. So we're really leaning into that for 2025 and doing 5 events in person, 5 virtual. We might be taking some of those in-person events on the road, but just this past year we did an event where there was 12 women. I rented a van. I said, hey, this is not a moneymaker. I'm just renting the van so that we can be in one car together to drive down to a farm. This farm is owned by a gentleman who is a veteran. He has been in 4 active duties to Afghanistan, and he returned and he said, I want to heal myself. I don't need drugs. I don't need therapy. I want to get back to the soil. And so he bought 34 acres. He started a farm, and he works with veterans to help them recover from PTSD and get back to kind of civilian life as best as possible. So 12 of us went down in this van on a Saturday, and we volunteered on the farm, and we transplanted some seedlings. And with that, he and one of the chefs that joined us made us this delicious lunch. He's also a hog farmer. So the animals on the farm, the vegetables from the farm, it was truly a farm to table like lunch experience. And that was in the spring of this year. To this day, every single one of those women is going, when can we do that again? I've already been in touch with Farmer John, and I'm sourcing his meat, and he's bringing it to Atlanta, and I use it in my soup. And so just being able to connect these restaurant operators or chefs or pastry chefs to the food that's sourced or can be sourced locally and just make sure that they're aware of it is just absolutely magical. So for us, it's just a kind of an add-on for being part of our crew at Terra Alma. And of course, our team is always welcome to join us for those events as well.
That was a great idea. And is it like its own, it's all people in Atlanta. If someone was a woman in the restaurant industry, how could they get connected to that? Is that on your website or is it different?
Absolutely. So we've got a website for womeninrestaurants.com, just as simple as it sounds. And then we also have the Instagram.
Women in restaurant or restaurants?
Plural.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
How did you do that? So
I don't even know. Like, it's just something that we acquired a little while ago and just thought it was a good fit. And then we're also on Instagram. So Women in Restaurants on Instagram.
That's awesome. That's super cool. And do you guys is it more like a mastermind or just like gets-togethers or just all kinds of different things?
Yeah, just like a lot of like lunch and learns and networking events. We do at the beginning of the year do like a webinar as to what the trends and concerns are. So this past year in January, we did a webinar with a culinary consultant who told us about like the rising costs of beef and what to be aware of. Also like chocolates and knowing that, the cacao production had been down and, just to kind of prepare in advance. So a lot of restaurateurs that we ended up speaking with that either listened to our podcast or, our webinar, or were connected in our field of influence were aware. And if they had the ability financially, they were able to buy in bulk in order to get cheaper pricing earlier in the year because they knew, right? Not necessarily trade secrets, but if you're aware of the trends and where things are going, you can plan to, be more efficient with that investment.
Yeah, I remember in COVID, I was getting warehouses for people just to store drywall that they bought like in bulk. And so like if something's happening and then you can adapt and, and do that. That's awesome. Oh, well, this has been great. Is there anything we haven't chatted about today you want to chat about?
I just am very bullish on seeing more and more women in commercial real estate. And with 85% of all consumer purchases made by us, we should be shaping the built environment more frequently than we currently do.
I'm a mentor for a few people, and I just heard just a very terrible tale. I think some of the cultures are still not super women friendly in commercial real estate. I think there still needs to be different changes and more inclusivity and those types of things. Because it's not good. So, she's leaning on me and, gave her my advice, and I'm glad I can be a mentor and share and help and help people to just even vent, because if they're in one of those environments, they don't have anywhere to go and they may not feel supported by their broker or somewhere like that. But yeah, I think commercial real estate has traditionally not been for women, but I think women bring a lot to the table. And there's some great guys. That's not to say there isn't, but no, I agree. So it's been really cool to build a woman. And I love that you have your own too. So awesome. All right. Well, best way to get a hold of you is on LinkedIn, Instagram, or what do you prefer?
Sure. Yeah, no, all of the above. So you can find Terra Alma at terraalma.com. It's TerraAlma.com. I've got personal website at Edie Everywhere. So that's 2 E's in the middle. And then our Women in Restaurants is exactly as it sounds, womeninrestaurants.com.
This is awesome. That's so cool. All that you have cooking. So pun intended, but I'm bummed. So, well, this is Amy Calandrino. I have my book launching in spring of 2025. My project manager told me I have to say that at the end of every podcast. So look for pre-orders to come available to Amy Calandrino soon. And this is Amy Calandrino signing off.